Hi, you're with us on the Leaderonomics Show. My name is Lily, and today's guest is Dato Charon Mokhzani. He is the Managing Director of the Khazanah Research Institute. Now, Dato's previous roles have included being the Managing Partner of law firm Zaid Ibrahim & Co., as well as being the Deputy CEO of Investment Banking of CIMB Group. Having led diverse teams in diverse industries, Roshan talks to Dato about really what is the best way to lead people and the importance of listening and giving people autonomy in their work. Let's check out today's episode of the Leaderonomics Show.
Welcome to the Leaderonomics Show. I'm with Dato Charon Mokhzani, Managing Director of Khazanah Research and also Executive Director of Khazanah National. Dato, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. You have an interesting, illustrious background. With the law, being dabbling in the law, studying in Oxford, being a board member of CIMB, CEO of CIMB Investments Bank. Tell us a bit about your background and how you got to where you got to. What's your secret?
Oh gosh, thank you, Roshan. I've been fortunate to have had many careers. I started off being a lawyer for a short while, and then I joined a bank. And
how did you get into law? I mean, was there something exciting that triggered you to say, I want to study law, or you saw some, or you had nothing else to do?
A close friend of my father's was a lawyer, but there was this TV series called Petrocelli, which was a long time ago. You probably haven't heard of it, but it was about this lawyer trying to fight for the underdog all the time. So
that works.
That sounded quite good. I like to talk, so
So that got you into law. Then how did you get into the whole finance investment banking side?
I don't know. I was lucky. I entered law at the right time. Merchant banking, as it was called then. Now it's called investment banking. Yep. But merchant banking was taking off as an industry in Malaysia. And for a while, I joined a company called Hsien Securities, and this was back in the rather long time ago in the early 90s when the stock market was booming, and so I learned a lot there. I went to law after that, but my biggest clients were all the big banks, and I was lucky enough to do a lot of work for CIMB, and after being a lawyer for a decade, CIMB, or rather Dato Sri Nazir, who was the CEO at the time, invited me to join the bank. As an executive. I was on the board for a while when it was listed, but they asked me to join. He asked me to join as executive, and it's not often you get a chance to have a major career change. And when that chance came, I was very grateful to him for giving me the opportunity.
And you started as deputy CEO, and then
when I joined CIMB, there were 800 people. And then within a couple of months, it went from 800 to 1,000. Now there are 30,000.
Yeah.
So during that time, it was quite a very interesting time. Yeah.
What were some of your challenges or highlights at that time? Or some lessons you learned?
I've been fortunate in my career. The firm I joined as a lawyer, I was a lawyer in Hsien, which is one of the biggest firms at the time. And then after that, I was in Hsien. Then after Hsien, I was invited to join Zaid Ibrahim, which was then a medium-sized firm with about less than 30 lawyers. And within the time I was there, we managed to go from that to being the largest law firm in Malaysia, with well over 100 lawyers. And when I left, I was a managing partner. Zaid was very kind, and he decided to do less of the day-to-day management, and I became managing partner before I left. And that was fantastic, to go from a medium-sized firm where there were 3 big firms controlling the market at the time, and we were one of the first to break into that to that market, because before that there were 3 large firms whose history dated back to the colonial times, and they were the ones who were controlling the market.
But you must have been doing something right? I mean, what were some of the things that got you noticed, and I guess to some extent enabled you to move up the ranks so fast? You know?
I don't know what I mean, but in terms of the firm, it was the right time. I mean, industry was changing, privatization had happened, so there was a whole new branch of law. I mean,
that's what great leaders always say. It's always chance, it's always luck. But embedded in it, I think there's some elements of hard work. There's some elements of content, of knowing, have some form of depth, I guess, that you probably built over the number of years.
Yeah, well, Roshan, I'm a bit shy to tell you that I'm really smart and I work really hard.
Okay.
And I'm really the best in the field.
It's fine.
I'd like other people to say that about me.
Sure.
I'm happy, but I know it's when you're trying to do this kind of things, trying to break into a market which has some well-established players in it already, you need the opportunity of a change in market circumstances. So, for example, when we're doing law, one of the big changes was privatization, which was a whole new branch of law. So, in a sense, we weren't competing with incumbents. Everybody was a new player. So there's a new market for Zaid Ibrahim and Khoo at the time to break into. And the second one was the changing nature of the capital markets. Malaysian capital markets really took off in the 90s and the early 2000s. New rules, new regulations, new ways of doing business, and that gave us a chance to break into that market. And the same at CIMB. CIMB at the time was the first to see the change from merchant banking, the old style merchant banking, which everyone was following to more investment banking and more client related stuff. So when there is a change in what looks like a very stable and mature market, if there is some market dislocation, that gives the outsider or the other person a chance to break it. And I was fortunate that I happened to choose a job where there was in an industry where there were these market dislocations happening. I would like to say that I saw all of this coming, but
there's always factors.
Yeah, there are always factors like that, and I guess
it's fantastic. We're gonna talk a little bit about your time in Khazanah and the stuff that you do in research.
Right.
But we're gonna take a quick short break, and we'll be right back here on the Leaderonomics Show.
Top 10 reasons why talents leave companies. Praise.
Cut. Top 10 ways to stand out at work.
What a difficult customer.
It's difficult when you just
But
join
then
a
again,
new company.
customers are always right.
Very angry and frustrated at your boss can be a bad idea.
Welcome back to the Leaderonomics Show. I'm with Dato Charon Mokhzani. We were talking a little bit about your time now in Khazanah and how you've transferred or transitioned from investment banking piece to a research-based organization. How did that happen, and what led you to move to research?
No, as I was saying, great opportunity at CIMB in terms of personal development, career development, the kind of people I met, all kinds of things. It's a fantastic time. But when you get offered another career change, it's
exciting.
It's really nice. It's really nice to take. So what I'm doing right now at Khazanah is to head up the research institute. I do other things there with the managing director's office, but my focus at the moment is on establishing the research institute. And it's a change because the research institute looks at as big picture as it can be, which is basically policy for national policy for the country, and in particular economics policy, but not just economics policy, but gravitate towards economics policy. And you sit around sometimes and complain about what's going on, and it's nice to have an opportunity to
do something
to influence. I mean, I'm not in the government. I'm not a member of the government, but I hope that we are able to give some ideas to government and policymakers as a whole in terms of what maybe can be done to improve things.
What are some of your research that you've done in the last couple of months or so that
Well,
you think it would be insightful and educational to the government and also to our listeners? And
Well, our first published report, I mean, we're doing some other things which haven't been published, but our first published report is something called the State of Households, which is which was launched in November, and it is really about the state of households. So what we look at is, GDP has grown a lot, and we are now an upper middle income country. GDP per capita is over $10,000 per person, which all sounds very good. But a lot of people say, but that number doesn't mean anything to me, as an individual. So what we did was we looked at household income, and our thesis is that while increasing GDP or GNI per capita is obviously a good thing, economic growth is a good thing, the end of the day, what we want is to increase the general well-being of the population. And if you're talking of the economic well-being of the population, probably the better number to look at is household income. And so we look at what the average household income is and what the median household income is, and we look at how household income is distributed within different areas, town versus countryside.
So what were some of the insights that came out of that?
As you would expect, it's not even, right? There are wealthy households, there are not very wealthy households. Households which are in the Klang Valley tend to be better off than households which are in Kelantan or Terengganu or Perlis or Sabah and Sarawak. And there is a lot more work, we think, which can be done in terms of making economic policy look more at household income. And for example, one example of this change and shift is the recent budget. I'm talking about the budget last year, which was announced by the government last year. And the budget talks about the people economy and the capital economy. And I think and for us, that's great, because there's this fundamental realization within the government and policymakers that when we're growing the economy, not to make profits for shareholders. I mean, that's nice if they make profits for shareholders, but really what we want is to have everybody to be better off. And the way to do that is to look at household income. So one of the things we look at as well is the structure of the Malaysian economy. If we want households to be better off, we have to make sure that people get higher salaries, right? And the way to get a higher salary, one is to have better skills or better qualifications. But on the other hand, we also need to have companies and industries and factories who need qualified people. There's no point having a degree if the only jobs available are jobs which are for someone with a Form 5 education. And on the other hand, you can't expect everybody to have a degree. We need jobs for people who are trained in technical colleges and vocational training, who are skilled workers who can do a lot. And so these are the things we're looking at. And again, I'm glad to say that this message finds resonance within the policymakers and the government. So it is nice to now apply the things I've learned in the course of my career to what I consider to be important questions. And I think and it is an important question, is what economic future do we want for the country?
A lot of people say that part of the problems of many nations is leadership based. Having strong leadership automatically will translate a village or a community or a nation. What's your take on leadership, or not so much the state of, but how we can build that DNA as part and parcel of nation building and your take on leadership in general?
Actually, I agree with you totally, because I went to one of your courses where you talked about leadership, and I agree. I mean, sometimes we hope so much that some great leader will come and save us, and one person cannot save 30 million. It takes everybody to
become
work,
that leader.
to become a goal, to become a leader. And in your courses, you talk about process being as important as vision, and I tend to agree. I think part of it is a management problem and a centralization versus decentralization issue. I mean, traditionally in our country, everything has been quite centralized. Central government says, and everybody follows. Perhaps perhaps we should look at something more decentralized, where we give people, on the ground who know what's going on, a chance to do something and to do something which fits their own particular circumstances. But I know I flip and flop. I mean, I've been fortunate to have worked with people who have been acknowledged as
Great leaders.
Great business leaders, and I've learned from them. But I've also observed that in any organization, you can't have the whole organization relying on one person.
Yep.
That's never going to work. So leadership is also about building up management systems and giving people the right degree of autonomy to
live their dreams and to execute them.
Decide.
Yeah, absolutely.
But sometimes I wish we could go back to the P. Ramlee School of leadership.
Yeah.
P. Ramlee School of Leadership to me is you just call someone in and you beat them up and call them names and tell them do your job. Because we can't do that anymore. I wish I could sometimes call somebody in and say and beat them up a bit. But we can't, and we have to persuade people now rather
influence
and persuade rather than order and coerce.
Yeah, but I guess it's part of the changing nature of the world and the context that we live in and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
One question that we will probably go in the next segment is to think about is, and we're going to talk about this next, is what advice would you give a young person who is wanting to emulate you, to become the next you? So we're going to be right back in the next segment to talk a little bit about how to become like Dato here. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Dato Charon Mokhzani, and we were just talking about your career and a number of things. But you know what? Before we get to my final few questions, let's play a little game of Thinkonomics. And it's a very simple game. We're going to take the dice, and you got to choose blue or red dice.
Blue.
Blue, great. Just throw it, and we'll pick a category. And your category is open category. So we'll pick a random card here. Relationships. And here's the questions. If you had all the funding in the world, what would you invent?
What would I invent?
Yeah. Or what would you make? Or what would you do? You got 15 seconds. Oh, I got a timer here. You got 15 seconds to answer this. Go ahead.
Peace, love, and happiness for all mankind.
Oh, how would you do that?
I don't know. Give me the funding, and I'll find out how to do it.
All right.
No, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's really about driving peace and love and
happiness.
Okay. Let's try another one. Let's do two more. Here, throw dice again. And it's growth. Okay. So let me go to growth. Here's growth. And here's a question: do you ask enough questions, or do you settle for what you know?
Well, I like to think I'm inquisitive, and I like to think I'm curious, and I like to think I question. But that's my own. That's how my own perception. I've no idea.
So we need to ask your direct reports whether you ask questions enough.
Yes.
But good. I mean, I think questions change. I have a philosophy that questions change the world, not answers. I think great men usually do that. Okay, the final one, and it's giving. Okay, let's see. It's giving. Okay, here's giving. And for giving, is it better to give to people you know or to people you don't know?
That's a really good question. Obviously, it's easier to give to people you know, but we often give to people we don't know. I mean, you contribute to a charity, you don't know who you're giving it to.
Do you prefer to give to people you know or you don't?
I kind of. Yeah, it's a tough question. It's a tough question because the temptation. The temptation is to give to whichever charity happens to have
the need,
who happens to have tug your right string for that week. But on the other hand, you think, why am I giving to strangers when they're people I know who probably need help as well?
Just as much,
so it's hard. I don't know, 50-50, I guess would be a kind of rule of thumb. But.
Couple more questions. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are in universities now, graduating, and they said, I want to be like you. I want a career in research. I want to have that exciting, multiple careers. If you had an opportunity to address a group of them, what advice would you impart to them?
Well, I think firstly it's hard to predict the future. So you're better off going with something you really want to do and really like, rather than going for something you think will turn out to be a good decision in 20 years' time.
What if somebody wants to get into a career in research?
The competition is so hard right now. You know, we're recruiting people for the Research Institute, and this is a plug. If you want to join the research, www.kriinstitute.org is the place to find the application form. But we get incredibly high quality applicants, people who have, you know, amazingly good. So I shouldn't say amazingly, very, very good academic results. When I say very, very good, it means, you know, GPAs of very close to 4, very, very close to perfection, and who've done, you know, all kinds of things outside the academic studies. So we get some really high quality people. So yeah, so in terms of research, I think you have to. Research is probably the most academic type subject. So to get into research, you have to display good academic qualities. It's not the only quality you need to have, but certainly it shows. But I mean, for example, you know, I started as being a lawyer, and then I became I studied philosophy, politics, and economics, and then I studied law, and then I became a lawyer, then I became a banker, lawyer, banker. Now that worked for me at that time. Now, probably the most exciting thing to be in is the digital, something to do with the digital economy, and you can do that probably by having, you know, a far better background in science or programming or maths or whatever it is.
True.
So you know, an exciting career now is probably something to do with and again, but again, you know, you can't. It's hard to predict. It's hard to predict these things. You know, if you sit down here today and let me choose the right subject, because in 20 years' time you'll prove to be the right subject. I don't think
there's always opportunities and circumstances.
But it is. But it is doing stuff which, if you don't like it, then you're unlikely to do well in it.
So do what you love.
So do something you like, but you know, as you said, you know, keep asking questions and
being curious about it.
Be curious and see where that leads. Yeah.
Final question: if you could address a group of CEOs, you know, what nugget of wisdom would you impart to them?
Things change, and they change incredibly fast. And you know, the markets you take for granted, the market you have right now may not be there in a few years' time. I mean, in the past, you know, it took a long time for you to lose a market, but in this digital age of disruption, you know, things can be disrupted very, very quickly, and the market you thought you have may no longer exist. I mean, the easiest example is in media, where you know, traditional print media or traditional bookshops are now almost killed off by digital. But you know, digital can disrupt anything. I mean, who would have thought that, you know, Uber could disrupt a taxi service, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, the threat of your business not existing is much higher today than it was in the past. So I think being aware of the threat of disruption, probably digital disruption, but any other type of disruption is a real threat, and it's one of these things you should just really think hard about.
You know, it's been fascinating talking to you, Dato Charon. Thank you so much
pleasure.
for being here on the show. You've been here right on the Leaderonomics Show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.